without further ado, I would like to move over. If you don't mind, we'd like to go over a hand history with you. Now, it's one that you've talked about a little bit, but let me...
From a recent Poker Out Loud episode with also previous guest. I believe it's the hand with Rampage Poker, one of them.
No, it's the hand
it's not?
Matt Vaughn.
Matt Vaughn. Okay, gotcha.
This one actually has not aired on their Solve for Why, so it's a sneak peek for people that haven't seen my content, but have been following the Solve for Why channel.
So that's the thing. Okay, good, because I watched the most recent episode and then I was flipping through and I was like, where the heck is this hand?
It's the very last hand of the last episode of the season, so it hasn't aired yet. So this is a spoiler for everyone.
Nice. Okay, so sneak peeks here. That's exciting. We're good to be able to give them the scoop. So for those who aren't aware, this is Poker Out Loud, 6-handed cash game table. The lights and the cameras are on. Everyone who's, before their action turns off their music will give a brief explanation of what they're doing with their hand, maybe a general strategy, some tips for range versus range, and then they'll make their play. So there's your general background on the table. It folds to Marley here in the cutoff. And before she even opens, the hand before this was particularly interesting, where there had been a 4-bet pot obviously 4-bet pre, but it's a 4-bet pot, the pot before this one, correct?
Yes. Yeah, it was definitely a wild table, and people knew that it was approaching the end of the night. So there was a little bit more 3-betting and 4-betting going on than, everybody knows what they're doing and nobody wants to back down. So this is the second consecutive shuffle of a 3-bet and a 4-bet.
So speaking of which, we get Marley, who's opening up to 30 here in the cutoff. That was a pretty standard sizing from what I could tell. People were going 25 and 30.
Yeah.
30 mostly,
and you're here with the ace-6 of diamonds. What is the thought process?
Well, so the thought process is that I know that there's tough players in the blinds, and I don't want to open myself up to flatting the button here and having a squeeze behind me. And, my hand is suited. It has blocker effects. I have the ace in my hand. Marley's opening from a position where she could be fairly wide. And it's not the worst thing in the world if she calls, my 3-bet and we go heads up to a flop and I'm in position 200 big blinds deep.
Yeah,
absolutely, completely standard.
That's a very straightforward explanation. Cutoff versus button, and we go for a little bit over 3x sizing, which makes perfect sense to me.
Almost every single 3-bet, interestingly, so many hands went 30 to 100. That exact sizing I found pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting because we're creatures of convenience. So putting in one $100 chip is just easier than putting in $90 worth of greens and reds.
That's interesting.
That's funny.
That makes sense. And so we see now the second 4-bet in a row. This one coming from our dear friend, Mr. Matt Vaughn, in the small blind, and it folds around back to you here with the ace-6 of diamonds.
Yeah.
Facing a 4-bet from the small blind, some people might get scared here with the suited ace.
Yeah, definitely. It's got some reverse implied odds, obviously, because if we flop an ace, it's generally not going to be a great thing. I actually talked through this on Poker Out Loud where I said we're going to have to be very careful navigating posts. This is the kind of spot where I'd rather have a hand 8-9 suited or Jack-10 suited, especially given that it's the second 3-bet, aggressive action in a row from Matt. So I think it's more likely to be strength in this spot from the small blind than the previous shuffle. I think that in general, when people do something twice in a row, it's usually stronger the second time. So because it's 170 more, and I already have 100 in, Marley's 30, his 270. I just felt like the price was pretty good at that depth, and I knew that I was going to have to be careful. So I put it in. I put the 170 in cautiously, knowing that I was going to have to navigate post flop.
Right, we're calling 170 to win 580 here, so we're getting really good odds. And I feel like, especially
being nearly 2 kg, yep.
Right, and as careful as you're going to navigate when you flop an ace, when you get the flush, that's going to be an opportunity to get in huge amounts.
And Matt Vaughn played really well on this episode, on this whole show. And his sizing is, I thought, curiously small.
Yeah.
And it felt like I couldn't really fold my hand for that sizing. In general, like if I'm four betting from the small blind here, I'm going probably 420 or bigger, you know?
That's so interesting.
Yeah, I thought it was insanely small as well. But yeah, I agree with your thought process, and let's see a flop.
Bit of a dangerous one here. Ace, King 10, rainbow. We do have a diamond on board. And Matt is going to lead out here for 175.
Yeah. So obviously we flop top pair. There's no decision here because we're not going to be raising with any hand that we ever arrive to the spot with. So especially when he has like aces, he has kings, he has pocket tens, he has ace king, like he has all of these hands. So it's so interesting because it's a 4-bet pot, even though the positions are small blind versus big blind, I think the ranges are pretty narrow here. Like
So
he's just not gonna have 7-6 suited here. Like I just don't see that. I just don't see that happening. So when he bets here, alarm bells are going off in my head, but at the same time, like I have top pair, you know, like
Yeah, backdoor flush.
yeah, perhaps he has king queen, perhaps he has a hand, you know, like I don't know, but like the point is that we can just never fold top pair for $175. There's situations in poker where we're just not allowed to do certain things, and I'm not allowed to fold an ace here. So we call.
Yeah, if we're calling with ace six and we flop an ace, while we think we could be behind a lot, as we discussed pre-flop and on the flop, we just can never fold if that's our game plan. Yeah, absolutely.
So we do end up putting in the flat here, and we go to a turn, which comes a absolutely fascinating card in the Queen of Diamonds, giving us now the nut flush draw and kind of putting our opponent's range in an interesting spot, like Matt does explain in this spot. And he actually ends up going for a check. And now it's on you here. With the nut draw, your thought process here was particularly interesting, so I'm going to let you explain.
Yeah, so I mean, it's pretty clear that we have the worst hand here. Like the fact that he's taken this line and checked the turn, I think he's gonna have a better hand than us pretty much all the time. So we're probably should be checking back here and trying to just realize our 23% equity or whatever it is. Or what we can maybe do is like bet small here and define him as like probably not having a jack and then just bombing off on the river. But the reason why I didn't want to do that is because I didn't want to put any more money in that would, because I know if I bet small here on the turn, he's calling like 100%. So now I'm creating a situation where the pot size and my shove on the river, provided that I don't get there and I turn my hand into a bluff, is going to be as such where he's going to want to call with his strong hands more often because of the pot odds. So in my head, I'm like, okay, if I, max my fold equity here and give him like a really bad price on the turn and just like over bet and jam it for like nearly a 2x pot shove here on the turn, now he's going to have to call with like maybe only aces and like maybe kings. And I think that like he's going to have to fold a lot of his other hands because I'm the one that possesses the jacks here. I'm the one that can have queen jack. I'm the one that can have jack 10. I'm the one that can have, king jack. I'm the one that can have ace jack way more often than him. He's just not going to have a jack in his range terribly often. Like the only jack that he's ever really going to have here is potentially like an ace jack suited type holding.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think that he will check some of the time. So it's definitely a gamble which allows him to know that like I'm going to have a jack here very small percentage of the time to make this call. So that's why I thought that I could be able to jam here and get him to fold every single hand, except maybe pocket aces and pocket kings.
Do you think ace king as well can find a fold?
I was like, ace king, I thought he would fold like 80% of the time. I just wasn't sure, I just knew that it was going to be such a terrible price for him that he was going to have to just find out what the very top of his range is and see if he's there and recognize that ace jack is in the top of his range, pocket aces and pocket kings is there, and that ace king might be in the tier that he actually has to fold.
Yeah, I actually agree with you. I think he needs to be folding ace king a majority of the time, which might sound crazy to our viewers, but these are such narrow ranges, especially considering the factors that you mentioned before, that I agree with your analysis. And what do you decide to do on this turn card?
Yeah, so I remember when I started talking it through, I wasn't actually sure if I was going to do it, but then once I started talking it out, I'm like, look, I have the jacks here and he doesn't. And when I polarize my hand here, he's going to think that I either have a bluff or that I somehow have a jack in my hand. And there's a lot of jacks that I can have, but what bluffs do I ever arrive to the turn here with? Like, I would have to be turning a hand that has showdown value into a bluff. Like, I can't call the flop with 8 and 9 and then just like turn it into a bluff here. Like, I literally cannot have a pure bluff. I can only have a bluff. I can only have a hand that has value, limited showdown value, and turn it into a bluff. That's the only possible way.
Yeah. It also helps that even if it helps that even if he does find a call, we're not dead. So
yeah,
that's good.
I actually mentioned that too. I was like, well, if he shows up with you know, the top of his range here and decides that he can't fold it, hopefully we can hit our 20 whatever percent and bail us out. So I went ahead and shoved it in. I remember when I was shoving it in, my heart started racing and I was just like trying my best to be calm. And I after I slid it in, I kind of like tipped down like this and just kind of was like looking at his hands to see like the motions that his hands were going to do on the cards. Wow. And it felt like an eternity.
That was so funny in the moment too, because like as soon as you shoved it all in, Matt was like, count.
Yeah.
You know? And I feel like, oh God, his analysis was so interesting. The way that he was like, oh God, like that's just gross. It's so hard, like you said, to put you on a stone cold bluff here because you don't have anything that calls the flop that shows up here on the turn and isn't in some way, shape, or form have ace king in trouble or basically almost dead.
Yeah.
So what does Matt Vaughn end up having for those who don't know?
Oh, yeah, he does end up having ace king off. I think the ace of spades and the king of, I think it was a red king actually.
And does he find the call?
No, he does not. He does end up.
Yeah, he eventually folded. And I remember as I was like, right before I slid it in, I was like, I think he has ace king here the majority of the time. And I think he's going to fold that 80% of the time or more. And I slid it in and just prayed at that point.
Yeah, and I think just knowing your opponent and knowing just that he knows that you know.
That he knows. Yeah.
I just think he read the situation very well, and I really, really, really like this turn bet. And whether it worked or it didn't, I'm sure feel confident. But it was impressive. It was fun to watch. It was good TV, and it was a good play.
I had a lot of people message on my YouTube and say that like, this might work against Matt Vaughn, but it's not working in my local 1-2 game. And I just have to like shake my head because like, yes, it does. If someone's sitting with like 250 big blinds and they're holding 2 pair on a board where there's a 4-card straight and you 2x jam, most people are scared money. Most people are not going to go through it and just like think what the top of their range is and maybe call sometimes. They're going to look at the absolute value of their hand, see that there's a straight on the board and be like, I'm not punting off my stack for, you know, with 2 pair on a 4-card straight board.
Yeah. The end I quote, they're never bluffing here. Like, how can they be bluffing? Like, yeah, no, I agree. And also just the fact that sometimes plays at 1-2 and plays at 2-5 plus, like absolutely aren't going to be the same. I mean, in this scenario, I agree with you. It will work, but like there's not 4-bet bluffs nearly as much in 1-2, 1-3. Like it just doesn't happen. Like,
yeah.
If you guys have any questions in the future that you have for whether it be our guest or for us or any comments on the hand, feel free to share. We love your guys' input. And again, if you have hand histories, shoot them in. This is from my run yesterday, actually in the nightly. I was put in a tough spot. Let's see it.
So for context here, right? We've got something around 40 people left in this field, correct?
I think there's like 50 people left, and I think I'm sitting in like 8th. Right. So I get in the pot with some big stacks. I'm in the big blind with A7 suited, which obviously is not the best hand in the world, but let's see the action.
Yeah, it's a great big blind defense hand though against in single response. But oh geez, I'm clicking on the wrong screen.
Especially when there's a flat behind.
So see a pretty standard 2.2x open here from the low jack.
So this is interesting, Ryan. Assuming there's not another call behind, are you defending this ace-7 suited?
Facing low jack open, 40 big blinds effective. Yes.
A fair answer.
I think you stop defending all suited aces, maybe 25 big blinds and below. And even then, maybe it might still be a call. But I think
I think it's a fold 25 bigs, especially given ICM and considering how small of bigs everyone else has. But I agree with your analysis.
Right.
But there's a flat, which makes this an absolutely easy just defend when the button flats. I'm not looking to squeeze this. Hard to kill. Had been opening a decent amount of hands, but I don't expect him to be crazy wide, and also don't want to get in a pot with obviously the person who has me covered, who can put a lot of pressure on me and risk my tournament life here. So yeah, I just decided to put on the flat, which I just think is the right decision.
We go to the flop, and okay, easy game. You flop top two here, ace-3-7, 2 spades. And so you're in the small blind here. Bryce, are you ever?
So obviously I donk jam.
Yeah.
No. I check it over, and I expect hard to kill to be c-betting this at a very high frequency with the intention to check raise, as he can have a ton of ace kings, ace queens, etc.
Yeah, I mean, it's a single raise pot, so he can have all the ace X here. Absolutely. And
Yeah.
he does put in the bet here, 1/3 size of the pot, which is honestly a pretty standard sizing for this dry of a board, and 3 ways.
No, I like his sizing. I think it's good, especially our stack depth.
He doesn't have to get folds a lot for his bluffs to get through here, which I think is really, really important.
Yeah.
The button ends up folding, and it comes to you. So you were just saying the negotiation of check raising. Why not just check call? Don't you block too much of the board?
No. I mean, he has so many aces. He can have ace king, ace queen, ace jack. He can have spade draws. He could have king queen of spades. I want to price those draws, and a lot of turn cards can come out that if a king or a queen comes out of the turn, I don't like my hand nearly as much anymore. So I want to protect as well as just get more money in the pot at this point. I'm not playing scared money. If he finds a fold here, so be it. The interesting thing is he probably doesn't expect me to be raising spades all that often here when he possesses so many aces. So I don't think I'm all that bluff heavy here when I decide to raise. And I also have more 7s and more 3s than he does, which also would elect to raise this flop. But yeah, what do you think about my sizing? I decide to go to 300,000. Do you think I should have gone bigger? That's not even 3x. Is that too small?
So the curious thing is to look at SPR. So, I mean, so you're going to have 31 bigs back. When he calls, he's going to have, wow, okay. So, I mean,
you can just put in the call to help you with math.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Why don't I just show that to put in the easy math? So, it could be 24 bigs with 31 back. I think you could have gone a little bit bigger here.
I think I could have too, to potentially set up a shove, but in the same grain, what is he calling with that even folds to a turn jam? And I think it might even look bluffier, is actually like leaving myself with this SPR. I think if a blank comes off the turn when I jam, it looks more like a spade draw than if I leave myself like a 0.8 SPR. I think
that's a
personally
really interesting point.
I think I could have gone a little bigger. I agree. But I think if I want to perceptively have a ton of bluffs in the situation, which I really don't have that many, I think I should be raising a little smaller. It's not like I min clicked it.
That's one of the things that I've been trying to implement into my game too, because you'll find sometimes that with hands like this, nutter butter, yeah, with hands like this, with strong nut hand, betting small can cause your opponents to do really funky things. 1/4 size block betting on river sometimes with nutted hands, especially in MTTs and especially in low stakes MTTs, has been a profitable play for me because it causes people to spaz with all sorts of bluffs. So I think that's a really interesting point to bring up, where if you had sized this check raise up a little bit more, because you size it up, it looks more like a protection raise. than this sizing, which makes it.
I actually think, honestly, some players are so bad online that if I make it this sizing, he might be calling me with like pocket kings, pocket queens, just with like the spade, like for back draw. Like, because if I make it massive, he's just gonna fold. He's like, oh, he has it all the time, whatever. But like, people literally will call you with back doors with such horrible equity. So yeah, I like my sizing. Maybe could have gone like 330, 340, but
Yeah,
I like
that
that sizing.
Now we're just nitpicking at that point.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so now we're gonna see the turn here. And it comes off the Jack of Spades. So on its face, that's a pretty bad card for you, Bryce, isn't it?
Yeah. I think he has some ace jacks, but I think he's more weighted towards a hand like king queen of spades than he is towards ace jack. There's only 2 combos left of ace jack suited. I don't expect him even necessarily to be raising ace jack off. He probably is actually. What am I talking about? But yeah, I'm just gonna look to put in the check,
because you also have to take into account the fact that to his left he has a 9 big blind stack and then a 3 big blind
yeah,
stack.
but I mean he's happy to get an ace jack for 9 bigs off of a 80 big blind stack. But yeah, I'm not that afraid of ace jack. I'm more afraid of the flush. But I'm just gonna put in the check here. I don't think I'm gonna get called by worse ever. And if he decides to bluff, awesome, and then just hope a spade does not roll off of the river.
So it is you were checking this turn card already having the intention of calling off no matter what sizing he went with, or
no, I didn't even necessarily I didn't expect him to jam here. I expected maybe he would bet. Like, I didn't expect to jam. So he rips in my face and I'm like, this is disgusting. Like, I have a top 10 stack. I can fold and still have 30 bigs. And then I'm like, wait, why am I even considering folding? What hands does he have here? And literally the only hand I decided I was afraid of was king, queen of spades.
Yeah.
The only hand. And I was like, why would he even necessarily jam that? I think he could bet like small and then just, I have to call on the river. Him knowing I have 2 pair, maybe have me draw, whatever. I was like, I don't think he has it. But the issue now is identifying what bluffs he has. And I think ace queen, ace king with the queen or king of spades makes sense. Hands of that nature. But other than that, I mean, it is a little scary because what the hell is he bluffing with? And I decided that it was just probably a bigger ace that had a queen or king of spades in his hand. And I was just like, I am too top of range to fold this. If I fold here, I'm just too exploitable. I don't think you can fold here.
Let me ask you a question. Let's say this turn card isn't the Jack of Spades. Let's say it's like the 9 of spades or even like the 8 of spades, just a lower spade card that now gives him more king, Jack of spade, king, 10 of spade, king.
The Jack of Spades is a better card than the 8 or 9 of spades, which might sound weird because while he has more ace jacks, it blocks so many of his flush combos, which is just so incredibly important to note. So yeah, I don't know exactly what I'm going to do. I think I probably call anyways. I don't know. Cause think about it. What does he have? King, Jack of spades, king, queen of spades. Yeah. King, 10 of spades. It adds a few combos, but it doesn't add an insane amount of combos.
Yeah,
it's not like he's raising, it's not like he's raising king, 3 of spades. You know what I'm saying?
Right. I totally
10 Jack of spades, but yeah. I flick in the call.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good call as well. And Villain does end up showing up with that exact hand that we were.
That's not. I didn't even mention that. I thought it was more weighted towards like ace king, ace queen with a spade. I didn't think he floated flop with just the king of spades.
That is. I mean, that flop call is the flop call versus the check raise is pretty egregious. I mean, I guess once it's checked to him on the turn here, like he kind of has to. I mean, I don't want to say he kind of has to, but I like the shove better than checking back because he's just never winning there when you check.
I'm so curious as to if an offsuit king or queen that comes off on the turn, if he decides to just rep the ace king or ace queen, which I think is suicide because I have, but I'm just so curious because I'm calling. Like if you have it, bro, you have it. Like, but yeah, it was a tough hand. It chipped me up a ton and it helped propel me into the final table in which I inevitably got 4th out of the 600 entries. So yeah, it was a good run.
Boy, Bryce, here comes the hand I don't want to talk about. But
I have not looked at this hand.
Yes, you have.
Was I there?
I sent this to you this morning.
Did I respond to it?
I think so, but you're going to remember it. This, for some context, every Tuesday I stream on the Team Poker Flops Twitch account with my good buddy, our good friend, Poker Police, a fellow small content creator. And so we run a couple of MTTs at once. And then, the thing is, for like table dynamics for me.
Oh, I know exactly what hand you're talking about. I have seen this hand. Continue.
Wow, there you go. I just saw the light come on in your head. Eureka. This playing on a stream adds something to it, right? It's kind of like Poker Out Loud, but he's looking at one spot at one time. I'm looking at 3 tournaments and also trying to run the OBS and looking at my fellow co-streamer spots.
What does OBS mean, Ryan? To those of us who do
I actually don't even know what it stands for, but it's how you stream to Twitch.
Yeah.
I've only just started learning how to use it.
We also should have put the clip of you losing to Boski in this video.
God, that's gonna
but if you guys haven't seen
Instagram.
that,
at Ryan the Rock Poker on Instagram, my most recent post is I got into a spot with the D1
on your story, or you actually posted it?
I posted it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you absolutely should. That's awesome. But let's get into this hand. We got 8-9 suited. We're gonna decide to bump it up. 2.2, completely standard. I like this 2.2 sizing. I think you can actually go a little bit bigger. I think 2.2 is more utilized in high rollers and tournaments where people know what they're doing. I think that's a sizing that a lot of people suggest. But in these lower stake tournaments, off a 37 big blind stack, I actually think it's fine. It's fine. 2.3.
That's so interesting. That's so interesting. Actually, that's something I set up my ACR sizing to be 2.2 big blinds, literally generically, just from having seen that being a default sizing from pros.
People are gonna call you wider than you think they are.
It's true.
I like to just, when in doubt, go bigger is my mentality.
It's good advice because I do sometimes own myself by going small and giving people better prices than I should. That's a big leak in my game. So
like when I make it 6 and you make it like 16 on the button,
16,
like dude, I'm calling you any too.
Literally anything, Ryan. Nice try. So we get 2 callers here from the small and the big blind. And the flop comes 4-7 queen with 2 clubs. We're faced with a decision here. Ryan geeks them out. Yeah, I do. I found a new octave that I didn't know I had.
So, all right, we're 3-way. We get the flush draw, backdoor straight draw. What are we doing?
So I actually ended up going with a check here. And my thought in the moment was that I don't like getting check raised here because if I'm getting check raised, I'm up against a hand that I'm absolutely crushed. And like
whether it be a queen or a bigger flush draw. I don't hate this mentality, especially given 37 bigs. If we were like 100 bigs deep, I would absolutely look to see bet this. But considering how shallow we are, I actually do agree that it's a check. I mean, I think you should be betting at some frequency of the time. Absolutely betting some frequency of the time because we can fold out virtually any non-queen. And if they're just flatting us, they might just call with queen 10. Queen 9. They might be raising us with queen jack, but we don't expect them to have ace queen king queen. So I think you should be betting here probably like 25% of the time. But I think checking a majority of the time is actually fine here, which you might be surprised by my thinking, but it's just given how many big blinds effective we are.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, and that's a really interesting point. I feel like that may be something that's crawling into my head from deep stack cash game strategy that isn't here with the shorter stack MTT. That's a really good point. So we do end up going with the check. And the turn comes the beautiful 6 of hearts, giving us now the open ender and the flush draw. And the small blind opts to lead out here for a pretty sizable amount. I mean,
he has to go sizable, double flush draw.
Exactly. I tend to lean this towards a lot of hands that are single pair protection type hands that obviously see this turn card and now
like what, ace 7 or a queen? I don't think like 8-7 can bet this.
Do you think? Well, that's
yes, it can. That's I disagree. 5-2, 8-7 can bet this. I don't think like 10-7, 9-7 can bet this.
Yeah, and that's the interesting part is what exactly is he making this bet with? Is it more weighted towards a queen? But he's flatting from the small blind, so I honestly don't think he has like that much queen jack. Like he's not flatting.
But do you think he's just barreling a flush draw when 2 opponents behind him also can raise him and put him in a weird spot unless he has a nutted flush draw that might just put it in anyways? I don't
No,
know.
I
Put it
think I
in,
weighted
but-
more towards a protection bet with a 7 than I
Yes. Okay. Yes. Or potentially a queen. Yes. Okay. Okay. I agree.
I think the big blind, because the big blind is defending two suited cards so often and has like all the 10, jack, queen, king, ace, X of like weaker suited cards, I think they're more likely to have the flush draw.
Okay.
And so the big blind puts in the call, and now we're faced with an interesting decision. I think you can.
You ever raising here?
I think you can if you. That's the thing is, so here's where I really struggled with it, is that now the pot size is 18 big blinds, and I have 37 back. So if I flat this, I'm still going to have around a pot size bet behind. And if I hit a 5 that's not a club or a 10 that's not a club, I think I'm just getting all the money against basically any hand that you're going to show up with there.
You know, it's weird because if you decide to just rip it in their face, they don't really have the odds to just call with just a flush draw. Like if they have like ace 10 of clubs, they're not going to call. But if they have a hand like ace 5 of clubs, yeah, they can flick in the call. But you put in such max pressure, and we don't really expect the opponent necessarily to have that many sets here. I mean, yeah, they have some sets, absolutely. But the issue with just ripping it in their faces, it looks so freaking bluffy. What are we raising with the hijack that on this turn we're just somehow nutted on that isn't a draw? So while this looks like we pick up so much equity, which we do, I think ripping it in their face, if they're competent players, if I have queen 10, I'm snapping you off. I'm snapping you off if you jam. So I don't think we can just rip it in their faces. While that looks fun and while I love pushing my equity,
because that's the thing is I'm thinking here, and that's one of those things is like thinking about, I think the small blind is weighted more towards a 7 here, and the big blind's more weighted towards a flush draw of some kind. So that would be a situation where, given that we have a stronger queen X, you could make an argument for pushing our equity through here. But I think realization is going to allow us to make money too. However, I put in the call here. And
additionally, if you're in a very, very soft tournament and you think you can find a better spot, sometimes it's mentally difficult to just rip it in their faces. I mean, you're never going to be, you could be pretty damn screwed here if they've got like ace 5 of clubs. Yeah. I think a call's fine. We still have enough depth where if we hit our flush, we can make money. Let's see a river. Oh, we hit our flush. Oh, I can't wait to win this hand.
Wow. And the small blind.
Oh, easy game.
Possibly the least surprising thing of all time, and puts in the check.
Oh, it looks like we're going to put in a value bet. Let's see what happens.
Oh, yeah, except the big blind puts in the bet. So this is pretty big, right? What is this? Like 14 into 20? Or sorry, 15 into 24. Lord in heaven. So if I call this, I have 17, or if I call this and I'm wrong, I have 17 big blinds. So I'm still very, very much so alive. That's a super duper playable stack.
Okay, so we call.
Yeah, and I think that's why that kind of does make me lean. So in game at this time, what I attributed this to was I think I had made the right read on the small blind that they had like a 7 or a 1 pair type hand that they weren't going to bet on a club river. But when the big blind bet this sizing, I weighted it really hard towards the fact that they're defending the big blind with all their 2 suited cards. And the flat on the turn weights them towards having those draws. And now the question becomes, does someone bet a worse flush?
7-5 of clubs. You don't think they're going to bet that?
The
issue is 7-6 of clubs they don't have because they should be putting more money in on the turn. Are they going to just defend 7-4 of clubs? Again, not possible. 4 clubs there. Like what? The only hand that really makes sense is exactly that 7-5 of clubs or 6-5 of clubs.
Yeah. 5.
So I guess that's 2 combos. But if this turn card was an offsuit 6, say the 6 of diamonds, I actually like a full tier more. But considering there's a double flush draw, you could even put Paradoke on a heart flush draw and Niskau or whatever on a horrible queen. I don't know why he's turning his hand, a showdown hand, into a bluff, so that's probably not that probable. But do you think he also, I think it's worth noting, we haven't even mentioned, there's a straight out there.
There's a straight
Do,
out there.
do you think he could be betting a hand like ace five with the ace of clubs that has a straight? That's also just betting so that you can't rip it in his face, so that he's trying to set his own price. I think that fact is incredibly important to mention. So the turn, if it hadn't brought a double flush draw, I think we can fold. And also, if the river hadn't put a four-liner out, we can maybe consider folding. But considering all those factors, I just think we're too top of range to be laying this down. And if opponents know that we're laying down the 9 high flush draw after calling turn with literally just a flush draw, they are going to punish the shit out of you.
Right.
I'm not saying you're necessarily right here like all of the time, but I think you're right here probably 50% of the time. And maybe that's an astronomically high number and I could be wrong. But in these smaller stake tournaments, I think people might just bet their fives.
Yeah, and I think so. You have to think about that, right? So we have to think about minimum defense frequency. How often do we have to defend versus this bet? And I think just given the fact that we're getting, what are we getting for a price here? What do we say? You bet 14?
He bet 15K. So you're risking 15K to win a pot of
so 30 plus 20.
53. Yeah.
So I'm calling 15 to win 53. That's what?
Yeah.
Almost a little worse than like 3 something ish.
You got to be right here about a third of the time.
So if I'm getting better than 3-1 odds here, and I only have to be good here, even like 20% of the time, I have to be defending with a lot of hands that make it to this river. And I think that's the reason why you have to call with all your flushes here. I don't think you really can profitably fold this flush here. I think if I had a read, if like I had a HUD up and it said Nescow is like a super tight V pipper, doesn't really bet rivers often, things like that, then you can make an exploitative fold. But I think me folding this makes me the one who's being exploited. And I agree, because I didn't see the 5 in the moment. I didn't see the 5. And I think that's really a key thing with the 4-liner out there to the 5.
And the double flush draw, I think.
And the double flush draw, yeah. He can have some busted hearts that go for it here.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm not even saying necessarily he has busted hearts that go for it, but that's a hand your opponent can have. So that means he can have other hands is more so the point of that. But I think the fold isn't great, but it's okay.
That's so funny because in the moment I questioned more about my flop and turn decision than I did about the river fold.
And you're surprised that I agree with all of it?
The reverse is true, that I was more correct in the spots that I was more concerned about than I thought I was.
I mean, yeah, if you jam this turn, I think the opponents are going to fold at a fairly high frequency, right. especially in low rollers. While low rollers can get it in pretty light, if you just jam 32 bigs over their 4 big blind bet, I think they're going to fold just like an ace high flush draw. Right. But if you're playing this in a high roller event and you decide to just spaz off on this turn, what are you saying you have? Literally name a hand that you're saying you have. Pocket sixes? What are you saying you have? So yeah, I think that your flop and turn play is okay. But we would look to call this river. But